I'm gonna let you guys in on a secret. I've never seen My Hero Academia. Now, I know that must be hard to believe considering the numerous times I've talked and made videos about the series in extensive detail, but it's true, I've never seen My Hero Academia and I'm not even completely sure what it's about. As I'm sure many of you will say next, I realize that it is completely unacceptable for a channel like myself, which deals primarily with, well, anime, to have not seen or even know much about what is undeniably the poster child for the medium right now. The only thing I do know is that, like most popular things, you have people on both sides of the fence who either call this series overrated trash or the second coming of Shonen Christ. If anything, this just makes me want to delve into the series even more and find out what could be causing such a polarizing response. So today we're going to do just that and get to the bottom of this. I'm gonna check out this franchise for myself and give you all a completely unbiased and neutral perspective on what is easily the most popular anime airing today. There's just one little problem. I don't actually own My Hero Academia, at least not physically. Now, we could take the baby route and stream it through a site like Crunchyroll or... But where's the fun in that? If we're going to experience the biggest anime in the world, I want to do it through the most unnecessary and archaic way possible. Now I just have to think about how we're going to get... Wait, who's that? Give me 1 second, guys. Well, would you look at that? As fate would have it, some kindly soul has offered to me their completely authentic copy of My Hero Academia, so it would be a crime not to take advantage of this situation and finally experience it for myself. I do have to say though, it's not exactly what I was expecting. Walt Disney Pictures presents My Hero Academia. The front of the box says it's a clever hybrid of Harry Potter and The Incredibles, and I happen to like both of those things, so here's hoping for the best. Our story opens with a teenager named Izuku Midoriya living in a world where superpowers have become commonplace. Not commonplace enough where you can just reveal them to anybody, but enough where if you looked into a crowd of people, you definitely have quite a few who possess some kind of super ability. Midoriya happens to be the son of a world-famous husband-wife superhero duo, and we begin our tale as he's sent to train his own ability at the most respected hero academy in the country. UA High School. There's just one little problem with all of this. Midoriya doesn't actually have a superpower of his own, and he's been spending the early years of his adolescence pretending to have powers in the hopes of not disappointing his parents. One of which being his father All Might, played by Kurt Russell, who was given the extraordinary gift of super strength. It's not exactly the most original premise in the world, but it's endearing enough in the beginning to have you root for Midoriya as an underdog and want him to succeed. He has a lot of hurdles he has to face, being not only a powerless member of a renowned superhero family, but also a powerless high schooler surrounded with classmates his age who have already developed their own. It's here where Midoriya makes friends with several other classmates who have been deemed misfits, as well as his childhood friend Ochiko Uraraka, as they all do their best to make it through high school while something more sinister brews behind the scenes. Right away, what stood out to me about My Hero Academia was the writing. It has a wit to it that you don't normally see in these kinds of shows, and I feel like that ultimately made the more mundane scenes throughout the series the highlight in contrast to the big bombastic superpower sequences that are scattered around. It's genuinely entertaining just listening to these kids talk to each other and learn how to appreciate their company. This is especially focused on with the relationship between Midoriya and Uraraka. It's one of those dynamics where you can feel the romantic tension between the two all the time, but they also manage to just have this really wholesome and uplifting friendship that you can actually buy they've been friends since childhood. There's also another character I won't get too in depth with named Katsuki Bakugo, another student at the academy with fire powers who acts as sort of a foil and rival to Midoriya. At first he comes across really douchey, but as the series went on, I started to see more sides to his character, and he actually became one of my favorites after finishing this current arc. My Hero Academia in general is interesting because a lot of my favorite characters shuffled around a lot as each one got more and more screen time. Even some of the side characters, such as the gym coach Shota Aizawa, played by Bruce Campbell, got some time to shine and ended up leaving an impression on me. This writing and character work ultimately lends itself to the overall series message that anyone can be a hero, and what makes a hero can derive from even the smallest acts of kindness. It's a cheesy but positive message to spread, and a lot of the series reinforces that message time and time again. One of my favorite narrative beats is the fact that despite having the two most powerful and world-famous heroes as his parents, Midoriya ends up in a sidekick class because he simply doesn't have his powers. What initially hangs over his head as kind of a shame and burden, over the course of one of the arcs, he finds pride in being a sidekick along with his other friends, and does what he can with just his resourcefulness and quick thinking. Another thing that left an impression on me was the absolutely insane art direction and animation work throughout the series. As a huge animation and Sakuga fan, the visual presentation of this series blew me away in a manner I was not expecting, considering the level of quality most battle shonen have. The key animation and storyboards here are obscenely detailed to the point where I couldn't even tell if I was looking at a drawing or real life. Another nice thing about the lifelike presentation is that a lot of the actors like Kurt Russell, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, etc., gave their likenesses to the roles they were playing to elevate the authenticity of the show. Writing characters and animation aside, there's just a lot here that makes it easily understandable why this show took off the way it did. Great music, fast pace, and some low-key mystery added in there for flavor has kept me engaged and wanting to watch more as soon as I'm done making this review. Unfortunately, it's not a perfect overall package, and now we start getting into the problems and why some people may be salty that this series is getting exposure that it may not deserve. There's one aspect I've avoided talking about up till now for a reason, and that would be the overarching narrative and the antagonists that our heroes have to end up fighting. Without spoiling anything, I have to admit that this aspect fell on its face completely, and the villains never really get the attention they deserve. I mentioned the fast pace being a positive before, but it also acts as a double-edged sword. The series spends so much time focusing on our heroes, their relationships and dynamics, their own personal struggles, and don't get me wrong, that's fantastic as I mentioned earlier. Spending so much time with them means we end up connecting with them more, especially considering the main cast are all underdogs who have to prove themselves as heroes. The issue comes from the fact that spending so much time with the heroes in turn means that there's less time to go around with fleshing out the villains, less time to have them stick around, and less time to just give them more of a presence. Because of this, it often feels like whenever a villain is introduced in My Hero Academia, you often only have an episode or two before they're gone, and they never had the chance to leave an impression on you. Another complaint I would throw at the series is that contrary to a lot of its peers in the shonen genre, My Hero Academia never really fleshes out the world in compelling or meaningful ways. The premise almost limits itself because since we're so focused on this main cast and their difficulties with high school, the scope rarely ever expands beyond that, and we're stuck looking at this intriguing alternate reality with superpowers through tunnel vision. Because of that, despite the more interesting character mysteries that there are in the world, I'm not really invested in this universe itself. I don't care what's out there in the world, and whenever the series eventually does start introducing new elements, it feels more like elements being introduced for the sake of plot rather than a living, breathing world where different factions and characters naturally come into play. Finally, the complaint you'll probably see most frequently about this series is that My Hero Academia doesn't really do anything new. It's an amalgamation of a bunch of different shonen tropes, and the mangaka makes no effort in hiding a lot of his inspirations. That being said, I will defend Hiroaka and say that even though it is very derivative of the shonen genre, I don't think that stopped it from crafting its own identity. Whether that's simply because we haven't had a shonen this popular since Naruto, or there's some kind of secret ingredient here, I couldn't tell you. But something about this series does feel noteworthy and distinct, despite taking so much from so many other sources. One thing I can say it does differently for a battle shonen, at least out of the ones that I've seen, is that there's a lot more focus on the slice of life high school aspects. This has been criticized a lot, but I actually think it's an interesting approach in a genre that's pretty stagnant. If anything, the fact that it is criticized just goes to show how comfortable people have gotten with this formula and are resistant to change. In conclusion, Walt Disney Pictures' My Hero Academia is a perfectly adequate battle shonen that, while not really doing anything new, does enough with solid execution that it keeps things engaging and makes me interested in seeing what will happen next. Watching these goofballs develop their abilities and survive through oh so relatable high school incidents is both entertaining and endearing. So hey, with a series like this, you've probably heard it all before, but I swore at the beginning to give my unbiased perspective on this entire series, and so I have. Follow me on Twitter for more anime ramblings, join my Discord if you want to be friends, and maybe next time we'll take a look at a different series everyone's talking about. I've been hearing a lot of things about this other show called Boku no Hero Academia. No idea what it's about, but I've heard it's got a lot in common with this, so we'll see if it's anything special. One thing's for sure though, the animation isn't anywhere near as good.